So it's not every day that you're going to get a controversial opinion from a guy dressed in a t-shirt that mixes Star Wars and Iron Maiden, but I'm the one who's been playing Call of Duty and Battlefield back to back, and I've noticed something that I think is worth highlighting. Now, this is only my personal opinion, and for all intents and purposes, objectively, Battlefield 1 is a great game. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare is way better than people expect. Check out my review for that. Now, this video is going to contain spoilers for all of Infinite Warfare's campaign and Battlefield 1's campaign. So if you haven't finished either of them, or if you still care about getting through it, by all means experience those campaigns for yourself. They're both pretty good. With that said, let's get stuck in. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com, and here's how I think Call of Duty Infinite Warfare actually portrays war and sacrifice better than Battlefield 1. I know, it's a bit weird. Anyway, let's get to the thing that I want to address. Honestly, I kind of think Battlefield 1's campaign drops the ball a little bit. I think a lot of their stories are rushed. And my main problem with this comes at the very, very beginning when you get the text prompt on the screen and says, "You are not expected to survive." Losing the characters straight after then, it's sort of expected. I think if anything, DICE could have made a much more poignant comment on the effects of war and the realities of having to face up to the fact that these people just weren't going to survive this by opening the game as normal. Maybe still saying, you know, you're about to experience frontline warfare, and then just robbing us of that control, having us realize that we can't actually continue as those characters, and then trying again and dying and trying again and dying. And I think that ultimately across all of Battlefield's campaigns, it jumps about so much that you don't really get to empathize and understand where these characters are coming from. You only really spend about an hour to 2 hours with each one of them. And for me, none of their arcs really paid off. I kind of felt that the whole thing was very rushed. I think that, you know, they sort of bring in like piano-based music and, you know, synthy kind of orchestral scores underneath a lot of what other characters are talking about as a way to sort of tell you, like, you know, feel something, feel sad, realize the gravitas of what's going on. But I couldn't get past the fact of how rushed everything felt. It never really resonated with me. And as much as Infinite Warfare is, you know, it's a Call of Duty game, whatever, at this stage Call of Duty is a giant roller coaster ride of just hands waving in the air madness and people shouting and explosions. Because it is that. The moments where it actually does decide to hit you with an emotional moment, a human sort of moment, for me, they were way more effective. They were way more resonant. I actually sat up and paid attention. The first one comes at the end of, I think it's the mission Burnwater, where all your guys are leaving this facility, as they usually do. You hop in your ship and you start flying away. And, you know, everyone's going, "Good job, man, hoorah, let's do all this stuff, let's jet out, man." And it's good, you expel, it's Call of Duty, that's the way it's gonna go. No, your ship malfunctions, all of a sudden, within a few seconds, your character is just hurled out to space. You've just got your guy Reyes just floating there, just having to reconcile with the fact that his entire platoon is unable to save him. And he says, "Look, just leave me behind, carry on, there's already a threat there. You know, you've got the evil Admiral Koch just descending on them, and they need to leave." And Reyes just says, "Look, it's me, it's my buddy Ethan, we're just gonna have to hang in space, and I'm gonna have to accept death." And that, you know, I mean, they pull it back in the campaign. They actually do bring him back. They do save him. But the fact that that comes out of nowhere, it's way more human. To make a larger comment on how I think something like Battlefield and Call of Duty both portray the effects of war. And yes, granted, contextually, we're dealing with one game that's grounded in literal reality in a war that did happen, and we're dealing with the other one that is dealing with interstellar conflict and spaceships and all that stupid, you know, ridiculous stuff. I know. But the point that I think comes through is that you think about what it must be like to be drafted or to volunteer to go into warfare. You get told, you know, you're not expected to survive. You get told that you're just, you know, bodies to the meat grinder. You're just another number on the rung, and you're not going to make it back. But it's not until you're wounded or you're facing that I imagine that the realization really settles in, where you have to say, "Man, I'm not going to make it out." And that moment, that realization, for me, wasn't in Battlefield 1, whereas I do think it's in Infinite Warfare. Now, granted, they do bring Reyes back and you live to play with him for a few more missions, but at the very end, your character does decide to sacrifice himself to become the target for one of the biggest facilities. He just decides to designate himself, and he says, "Right, fire all the missiles on me, I'm in position, you guys need to take me out, blow me up with this facility," and everything goes up. But he doesn't die, and instead he gets sucked back out to space. And look, it's existential as hell, but you think of developers Infinity Ward, you realize that they've been working on this franchise, especially since Modern Warfare was 2007. They've been working on, you know, developing these sorts of games year in, year out. Granted, there's a multitude of developers that contribute to this, including Treyarch and Sledgehammer, but Infinity Ward are the guys that put Modern Warfare on the map. Either way, the general existential comment that I think Infinite Warfare is trying to make, as your character gets pulled out into space, he's just floating away, and he slowly looks back and he sees that regardless of the fact that he's just sacrificed himself, regardless of the fact that, you know, all his crew are dead, everyone is dying, he just floats away, just watching these two sides just battle it out. The rockets keep going, the gunfire keeps happening, the screams keep going on, and he just floats out to space and he dies. Now, okay, it's Call of Duty, it's over the top, it's a roller coaster ride. You're not really meant to look into this stuff this much. But for me, knowing that character and getting to empathize with Reyes and knowing what his motivations were when they were robbed from him, when I didn't even see it coming, you can go down the whole narrative school of like, well, he was probably going to kill off the protagonist. Whatever, I don't really care. I didn't see that coming. I think that creates a sort of a human interaction, a human connection with that character that I didn't have with any of Battlefield 1's guys. And, you know, regardless of the fates that happened to those characters, all that stuff was so rushed. I don't think you can manufacture that sort of human connection. And regardless of everything else that Battlefield 1 achieves with its, you know, rollout of statistics and, you know, the viewpoints on the war and all the different nationalities and ethnicities and cultural clashes that are in there, I don't think it portrays a human connection like Call of Duty does. For me, it hit home. Maybe it didn't for anybody else. And maybe to a hell of a lot of you, it's going to be madness to say that something like a Call of Duty could even come close to matching up Battlefield 1, which is obviously taking its inspiration from World War I itself. And that, just by virtue of being based on real life material, makes that hit harder. I mean, maybe that's just the case. It wasn't for me. Now, this isn't a giant, rant on Battlefield 1, but I think it's too easy to just look at that game, look at the subject matter and give it a pass. I don't see the human connection that is necessary to convey the sense of loss. And again, as ridiculous as it is, I felt that more in Call of Duty. I'm Scott from WhatCulture.com. What do you think? Is it madness? Is it ridiculous? Have you even considered Infinite Warfare and the sea of hate that's kind of going on around the whole thing? Let me know in the comments. Let me know how you think games should portray warfare, sacrifice, and conflict, and I'll see you soon.